We're about to fire everything up and see what works, what doesn't. Monitors. Let's talk about monitors. No, not the kind used by the CIA, NSA, various other entities, and military industrial contractors unconstitutionally against United States citizens. I mean computer monitors. Here's the thing. I think it was part of the whole film composer idea with a big template and everything. You see like Hans Zimmer, his super cool studio, and all those guys with the John Pisano. I saw he had like a big TV, and so I got the idea of using that, and it is nice. It's nice. It's nice to have your mixer on one, you know, monitor over here, not have to flip through, do a key command to get to the mixer, to be able to see your levels just at a glance. It's also nice to be able to have scopes on another screen at the same time to always see this. It's cool, it's nice, it's convenient. But I'll tell you what else it is. It's a lot, it takes up a lot of space, and it is also a lot of cabling to make this work. Something that I found over and over was the dock that I had that has like various connection points to be able to run 3 monitors. Sometimes this wouldn't, when I would power up, sometimes this wouldn't work. And then you would have to like shut down and then reboot, and then it would work, and then it was usually always good. But every now and then it would just always be a thing, and then sometimes you'd have to unplug the television for some reason that didn't work, and then it would have unplug it for like 10 seconds, reset it, and then plug it back in, and then it would recognize into the dock and all this kind of stuff. And that's just part of it, but there's also something about like these days with so many of the DAWs, like, you know, Cubase and Nuendo. I mean, there's just a key command for the lower zone, and then you have your mixer right there. And, or you can put whatever you want into the lower zone. So it's really, it works out very well. Ableton's had this kind of way to see your mixer all the time. In Sequoia, it's just a key command that to pull up the mixer. It's really not, it's not that bad. I mean, Pro Tools too. All of them, I'm sure. It's the point that I'm trying to make is that I feel like possibly for the kind of music that I want to do, I don't need any of these monitors. Do I really need these monitors? For video editing with a larger screen to be able to see the video, that's helpful. For music, it's nice, but I feel like the convenience of just having one screen, and really just on the laptop, I'm kind of all about it. So far as giving that a try to go this way. So the computer monitors, much like those unconstitutional monitors of those various entities, I feel like are perhaps quite unnecessary. Speaking of mass surveillance, be sure to check out my zine that is available on my Bandcamp. This is about Julian Assange. It's called Inside the Red Cell, which is a reference to CIA internal red cell memo. And I'm going to talk about surveillance and monitoring and all kinds of horrible things. Check it out. Available on Bandcamp, or you can write to me directly, jfrederick.com. Here's another thing. Tables without wheels will never be purchased for my studio again. Tables without wheels will never be purchased for my studio again. You know how sometimes you'll be watching a movie and say a lady is sitting at a diner and she's drinking a cup of coffee and the cup of coffee is full, and then they cut away for like a minute, for like a second even, and they come back and the cup of coffee is like almost empty. Well, as you probably know, that's called a continuity error. So can you spot the continuity error here? So the electrons are back in the rack, and I know I went on about how happy I was to have the electrons out of the rack, and I was. But the problem with this is that, well, it's the overarching problem of the whole studio revamp, is that on the one hand, I want to have everything just very streamlined and simple and straightforward and no fuss, mostly just in the box working with the computer. On the other hand, I like the stuff that I already have. I like my electrons, I like my Eurorack modular stuff. I'm not so big on the rack compressors and the rack reverbs. I could take that or leave that. I'm not so big on the dope for shout work for sequencing the Vermona. I could take or leave that, but I do like the Vermona. I like the sound of it. I like the tweakability of it on the fly. And I do like to have my send effects on a mixer. So I could do all of that in a more simple, less complicated way than having the patch bay and all of this routing, which you will also notice that the cabling is all back, which I wanted to get rid of. But I mean, here's the thing about it. It's like I could spend more money in order to streamline all this to get it to be different than what it is. Basically, I would have to spend more money, and I don't want to do that. I've already got all this stuff, and it all works, and these are the things that I want to use. So that's that. So the deal with the Electrons is that yes, it's nice to have them out on the table. It's nice to be able to say, oh, I just want to use the Octatrack and say pair that with a 4-track tape machine and do something like this, and have it with just those two pieces, which is not as easy to do. I mean, you can do it like this, all racked up, but it's not as nice. But the thing is, I do like to use them all together also. So all three of them synced to a clock and running together and be able to play them this way. And so then you have to have that out on a surface here. They won't really fit here. The boxes themselves will fit here, but once you try to put the connections in, there's not enough room here. And then I'm back to the same deal of like dragging out other tables and this and that. So there is that. The other thing is I wanted to do all of this as kind of a standing situation, so I'm not just in the chair all the time with the mouse doing this, but moving around and being able to work. So that brought in this piece here to have the laptop there. I don't really feel like I need the monitors. The monitors aren't, I can work without those. And then in that case, I don't really need an extra keyboard. The laptop that I'm using, which is old, the Lenovo P70, it's got the numeric keypad on there, which is used a lot in Nuendo and Pro Tools. And it's got a 17-inch screen, that's fine. And with using like the lower zone in Nuendo, Cubase, for the mixer and quick key commands for the mixer page, that all works fine. That's good. The other thing was clocking all of these things that I want to be able to use. So far as a MIDI clock, so that everything's synced, I used the Motu MIDI Express XT. And otherwise, I'm gonna have to be plugging in MIDI connections in and out of just like a single MIDI in, MIDI out on the interface, and then I can't have them all. I can't even have two pieces really working together unless you're like sending MIDI clock from one to another, which you can do in the Electrons, but you can't do that for everything. So back to using the MIDI Express, the Motu MIDI Express, to be able to get a MIDI clock to everything. So in some ways, it feels like a less elegant solution than what I had before with the what I call the film composer setup with the big Doepfer keyboard, which is very, very luxurious, this keyboard. But I'm not really a piano player, so it's nice, but I can do without that. This works just fine. So I'm not exactly sure how it's going to go in the long run, but I mean, I've got all this out here now, so at least for the next 6 months or so, I think I'm going to go try working this way and see if maybe over the course of time I can kind of detach myself from the whole workflow of using the big keyboard and all the monitors, and maybe try to pare this down less and less, a little at a time. And some of the less than elegant solutions that I have here with using a lot of USB, I've got 2 USB hubs here to be able to get all the dongles in here, and then have my USB connections from the interface and the MIDI Express and other things, whatever else is needed. Like sometimes I like to just use this little Soundcraft mixer that has USB out here, and it's nice to just be able to plug that straight in and go, and it does fit here. So that's something that's also an option. Anyway, that's where we're at. Electrons back, and last night I got most everything in the console patched back into the patch bay, and we're working on that now. Probably going to move the Electron rack to this side, move the Doepfer and the Vermona over to this side, and the only reason for that is because of the cable length that I have to be able to access the patch bay. I'd kind of prefer to have it over here, but as I said, I really don't want to buy more cabling. I mean, if you could look at this floor right now, and you can see it's, there's a lot of cabling. I've got a lot of cabling, so I'm going to make it work with that. All right, onward, upward. Another thing that I should mention is the reason this is kind of taking extra time is because I've noticed this. I think I get kind of OCD about certain things. Some things I'm really just kind of, it doesn't bother me, but there are things that, like certain kinds of symmetry that I need. So like with cable routing, and then certain placement things, like things placed in the room, certain kind of symmetry I need with this. And then sometimes if it's too symmetrical, like if things are like too matchy, then that can be a problem. But things like placing the speaker on the stand, which I was doing last night, it's like getting it just lined up on the stand so that all of the corners are exactly the same amount of space on the stand platform. I mean, I can spend enormous amounts of time, 10 minutes on one speaker, just moving it a little this way, a little this way, but it has to be done. This is how I have to do it. So it takes extra time, but then I feel good about it after I get it the right way, and I feel like in the end, this is a good thing because everything's set up just how I need. But I can't skimp on that kind of things. Other things I can, but I'm not sure how it works. But certain placement things take a long time. I patched up everything from the patch bay into the console, like I said, but then I was routing out some of the 8-channel looms of the direct outs, and after I got it all patched up, the first 8, I couldn't get the cable to lay right with the other 2 looms of the direct out, so that had to be unpatched to move it around to repatch it. Things like this take a long time. honestly, this is why the last time I set up the room, this is exactly why. The last time I put together the room, I left all this space around this equipment, the racks, and behind everything, because doing it like this is not it's not ideal. But the problem with doing it the other way, where you leave all the space, is then it takes up all your space. So if you have a large room and that's not an issue, you know, great. Or if all you really want to do with the room is just have the equipment in it for the studio and it doesn't matter, then that's fine too. But think about it, all those studios that you see on YouTube where everything's like right up against the wall, but they've got all kinds of stuff. At some point, you have to go in there, you pull everything off the wall and try to patch everything in. And it's not the best. Here's another idea, just to think about. When you're making your patch bay, especially if you're using like these 1/4 inch patch bays, I like these 1/4 inch people have asked me before, like, you know, why don't you use like the Switchcraft patch bays, or some of the other solder point patch bays with the tiny telephone connectors like you see in studios on the console or next to the console, and you have a lot more in a smaller space. I could never use that because having everything soldered in, all those connections soldered in, that's fine if it's like a permanent installation and this is the gear you have and that's what it is, like in a commercial studio. But I'm changing things up so much and moving things around and taking pieces in and out of the system that would be not, that would not be ideal at all. So my tip though is this. So when you're making your patch bay, if you're using one of these 1/4 inch patch bays and you're making your label for the front of the patch bay, just go ahead and make a second label and put it on the back. While you're at it, just go ahead, make the second label, trim it to fit, put it on the back. We'll do this in the future. All right, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you where we're at so far. I know I had gone on and on about getting rid of all this cabling, and that is not what we have here. But for right now, I'll talk more about this later, I think, because I've been thinking about it. It's going to be a process. I was listening to this Michael BRAUER video, and he was talking about how long it took him to get rid of all his rack gear and everything. And I understand. I thought I was there, but I'm not quite there. I'll talk more about that later, but I'll show you what we've got going on. Okay. So when I was taking everything apart, you see me looking at my phone. I'm not just like checking my email or something. When I took everything apart, I tried to take as many pictures of the connections just to be able to remember in case I needed to put it back, and that has proved very helpful. And in retrospect, I would have taken even more pictures. Ideally, it would be best to like take the pictures and write down some notes about what all you've got going on.